Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Concordia College. On such a beautiful day, it's hard to compete with this weather. It's good to see such a nice showing, both in person and online. Welcome to today's Lawrenson Center for Faith and Work event. My name is Michael Chan, and I am Vice President for Mission and Inclusion here at Concordia College. Overseeing the Lawrenson Center for Faith and Work is a sacred responsibility for me. The center honors the life, the work, and the legacy of Norman M. Lawrenson, renowned philanthropist, former CEO of Burlington Northern, alumnus of Concordia College, and former member and chair of its Board of Regents. Through his life and generosity, Norm helped to build a more joyful, just, and trustworthy world. And in honor of that legacy, the Lawrenson Center for Faith and Work takes up this question: how do we build a more trustworthy world? The language of trust is a rich part of the Lutheran heritage in which Concordia is rooted and grounded. And within that tradition, human beings put their trust in a benevolent creator who acts with mercy, compassion, and justice. But human beings, in turn, are also responsible for co-creating a world that is similarly merciful, compassionate, and just. Today's conversation seeks to think about how our rapidly changing world is and will be impacted by developments in the field of artificial intelligence, with a particular emphasis on the consequences for human flourishing. I am really proud to say that we've assembled a remarkable cadre of regional experts from various sectors and institutions and industries to help us think through these incredible challenges. I'm going to offer those introductions right now. Dr. Ann Denton is the James A. Meyer Professor of Computer Science at NDSU, just a few miles down the road. She specializes in computer science, teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in database systems and computational technologies for environmental sustainability. Her research focuses on big data and machine learning, applying innovative methods to address environmental and agricultural challenges. Dr. Ahmed Kamel is associate professor at Concordia College. His research focus, full professor. I apologize. Full professor at Concordia College. His research focuses on artificial intelligence and knowledge-based systems. He is dedicated to enhancing student learning experiences through a comprehensive approach that bridges theoretical and applied computing studies. Dr. David Newman is a physician at Sanford Health, specializing in endocrinology and informatics. His focus is on managing and treating conditions such as diabetes and thyroid disorders, aiming to improve the quality of life for his patients through advanced medical care and patient-centered approaches. He will help us think through today through how AI is being integrated into his specific healthcare profession, his area. Dr. Harun Pirim is professor at NDSU at North Dakota State University in the field of industrial and manufacturing engineering. His research interests include mathematical programming, network science, and machine learning applications in biological, social, and decision sciences. His recent work focuses on social media network analysis to distinguish individuals with certain traits, machine learning, and deep learning to predict functions of hypothetical proteins, and multi-layer network analysis of power grids. He is also the founder of CEL, which is the Connect, Elicit, and Learn Lab at NDSU. And finally, I want to introduce my co-moderator, Dean Chris Mason, Dean of the Offutt School of Business and Associate Professor of Finance at Concordia College. His expertise spans business valuation, portfolio construction and management, fixed income analysis, investments, and transformational leadership. Both Ahmed and Chris were original partners in the design of this panel. I want to offer special thanks to the two of you for being creative partners in this. And now what I want to do is hand things over to Dr. Kamel, who will open our time with some reflections on the current state of the field in AI more broadly, helping us to separate especially fact from fiction and myth from reality. His comments will be followed by a panel conversation along with some time for audience Q&A. Ahmed, thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. This has obviously prompted the whole discussion of AI happening everywhere these days is prompted by a really interesting event, the introduction of ChatGPT about a year and a half ago. Many people outside of the field of computer science think that AI is a new field. AI has been around. The term AI itself was coined in 1957. And research has been going on since then. And I personally have been involved in the field of AI. It's been my area of research since I was a master's student in 1986. Um, so these days, there's what prompted this? Really, if you look very carefully, what prompted the ideas have been around. Even something like ChatGPT is not a completely novel idea. What prompted this to happen is we finally have computing technologies that's catching up to the ideas that's been developed before that. You know, people have had ideas and technology was there. So we are getting into many applications. That said, ChatGPT, the reason it grabbed lots of attention and media attention is that it's targeting a particular area that relates to almost everyone. But AI, there have been very significant progress in the field of AI and other areas. The field of AI, if you look at it in the world, is really divided into two almost very different areas from each other, something called symbolic AI and something called neural AI. Symbolic AI is basically programs, traditional computer science programs written using programming languages. AI developers interview people in a particular area of expertise, in a particular area of medicine, of engineering, of law, what have you, and write programs that duplicate the expertise of these people. This has been around. There are significant successes in it in the real world. That we just don't see it, but it's there. If you ever drive at night and with those traffic lights that are in a busy city, in particularly busy cities where traffic lights communicate with each other and to coordinate the flow of traffic to make sure that you don't get a bottleneck somewhere, these are AI programs that's been around since a very long time. In fact, we have one of those around the Fargo Dome, that when the Fargo Dome lets out, it actually, by manipulating the red and green timings of the different traffic signals, it directs the traffic so that you don't get a bottleneck that I was personally involved in the development of. And there are many other fields that are there. So that's in symbolic AI. What ChatGPT and its similar systems fall under is what's called neural networks or connectionist AI. This is a very different field where we don't gather expertise from people. We gather very large collections, and the emphasis is on large connections of problems of the type we want to solve. And we have mechanisms to make those. The networks are basically neural networks. They are an attempt to simulate the human neural nervous system. So we have building blocks. They are similar to the individual neurons with connections similar to the synapses. To our understanding of them, which of course itself is not 100% there, but it's there, and these systems get trained by being given a large number of problems from the past with their correct solutions, and by exposing them, the idea is essentially similar to how children learn about the world. By exposing them to those large number of problems, they start strengthening and weakening connections between the individual building blocks. They are called perceptrons, the artificial equivalent of a neuron. And by strengthening and weakening them, and then it becomes trained to solve the same type of problems. This is what ChatGPT and the likes are based on. It tends to be, it's time consuming, it's slow. That's why it didn't develop until recently when computing technology became a lot faster and so forth. And it tends to be very expensive. ChatGPT itself, when it was first introduced, OpenAI, the company behind it, leaked the figure saying that it cost them $13 billion to build it. This figure have been revised downwards several times. It's less than half a billion now. But they also say it costs them approximately, and this many people agree that seems realistic. It costs about $700,000 per day to maintain it, which of course is quite expensive. Um, Both sides, the term intelligent, we have to really be very careful about its intelligence. There is nothing intelligent about it. It's computer systems that solve problems. What makes them intelligent is they seem intelligent. They solve problems we typically associate with intelligence. But we really have to be very careful because they learn from the world. And the world is not an idealistic place. Shortly after ChatGPT was introduced, Amazon had a similar system that they developed in-house that they thought is, there are many places that have computer programs that scan and filter job applications. Amazon built one they thought is going to be strong because they fed it all the history of employment in Amazon and in some other companies that agreed to be used. And within 4 weeks, they discovered that their neural network-based program trained itself to exclude all applications by females, because historically the emphasis was on hiring males. Amazon, of course, shut it down and discontinued it. And interestingly enough, this is not the first attempt at something like that. A few years ago, Google built one whose job is to carry on conversations and engage in discussions on online forums. And within 48 hours, the program was using obscenities and F-bombs and many other things. And that also got discontinued. So these are the things that really raise the ethical concerns that everybody's worried about. But notice something like ChatGPT, it's really focused on very narrow areas of expertise. It knows how to carry on a conversation. It knows how to research a topic and present you with the results in a fairly well-articulated narrative and so forth. But that's about it. Last summer, I had 2 students working with me to research its capabilities and its limitations, and they tried it on a few different things. In math, it fails miserably doing math. It failed miserably attempting to play chess. It can write computer programs. It writes computer programs. It's really good at it as long as what you need is a fairly short computer program. The minute it grows, it explodes. Asking it to research topics and provide research results with citations really is very weak. It provides reasonable stuff for the casual observer. When it produces citations, it oftentimes totally hallucinates. It produces citations that are, the authors are fake, the journals are fake, and it's just occasionally even more dangerous, which raises really serious ethical questions. It produces citations using real names of well-known researchers, using the names of well-known, popular, highly regarded journals, but the article doesn't exist anywhere. It just makes up articles, which is really serious. And of course, it provides real citations, but that's, it's one thing there that's there. So because of its ability to generate this stuff, there are fairly useful applications out there, but there are also fairly serious concerns we as a society have to be very careful with. It's already documented that it has been used to spread false information, misinformation. About 10 days ago, I'm sure many of you have heard about it. Michael Cohen, our ex-president's counsel, was caught providing fake legal citations generated by, at the time it was Bard, it's known as Gemini now, Google's variant of these. So he provided legal briefs citing legal precedents that are actually fake. Um, Given how it generates information, I'm fairly confident that he probably thought it's not fake. I mean, he thought, okay, I'm asking, this system is giving me information and so forth. So we have to really be very careful with these things. Um, so that's really the the big lay of the land, and it's important to note. You see the media focusing on AI these days. It's the newest thing. It's going to solve all problems. Historically, since the first day when computers were invented, the media latched onto something new for 3 to 5 years and said, this is the end all, solve all problems solution. And then it turns out, of course, not to be true. And incidentally, this is the third time that AI became the target for this. The first time was in the late 80s when there were lots of when the idea of building a so-called expert system that mimics human expertise and build something around it was starting to mature. And then it fizzled, and then it came around again in the mid to late 90s, where it started saying, there were really large expert systems applications starting to develop and so forth, and again fizzled, and then this is the third time around. So we really have to be careful what is there. This time, there is potential, again, because computers are getting, mainly in my opinion, and in the chatter I see from the AI community, because computers are getting fast enough to support ideas that people had for a very long time. So I think I'll stop here, and so that we can all talk about it as the panelists.
Great, thanks. Just give us a moment as we all shuffle onto the stage.
Can you hear me? Yep, good, coming through. So this is really for all 4 panelists. Describe how AI is being currently used in your area of practice or expertise. And we'll start from the audience's left to the right.
Thank you. This is Harun. So my profession is in industrial and manufacturing engineering at NDSU. First, industrial engineering connates to production and manufacturing, right? Most of the people are familiar with that or thinks that industrial engineering does that. So I will start with this, how AI is applied in production or manufacturing domain. There are lots of stuff like, to talk about it, Professor Ahmed mentioned, AI is all about, using this abundance of data available with the existing technologies. And here in manufacturing industry, we are talking about around 2 petabytes of data. So 2 petabytes translates to, 1 petabyte is a million gigabytes, to think about it. So we are talking about actually around 2,000 petabytes of manufacturing related data available. So that gives power, for this industry, manufacturing industry, to make use of it. And actually, it is assumed that maybe it has $500 billion value right now for manufacturing industry. And applications are in, for instance, predictive maintenance. Like, it's important to predict where a failure will happen with respect to machines, equipments, and everything in manufacturing setting. So once you figure that out, it's going to save thousands, if not millions of billions of dollars, right? So it's assumed that it's going to be $500 billion savings, think about it, just in the domain of predictive maintenance. And another aspect of industrial engineering in this sense is forecasting the demand. Everything is forecasting demand, actually. That's also the economy. Economy is about, I think, forecasting demand. So AI is very powerful in that. So you can make accurate predictions compared to classical demand forecasting methods available. So since we are talking about decent prediction models, you can imagine your demand predictions will be so accurate. And this accurate demand will save a lot of inventory costs. It will save a lot of transportation costs. So all aspects of production, including transportation, storage, just supply chain, wide problems. So it's going to save billions of dollars. So that's another aspect. I think that's fair enough to catch up with, how AI relates to manufacturing. But industrial engineering is more than that, and I'm particularly on the side of decision science of industrial engineering. And my research lab actually works on a variety of problems, including bioinformatics, social science, to name. And I want to talk about my recent work. I recently, for instance, work on aquaculture bacterial genomics. If there's some biologists around. So I'm familiar with genome data of this special bacterial species. So I just work on their genome sequence data sets. And out of this genome sequence data sets, I predict some protein functions. Not all protein functions are known for this bacterial species. So it's important for biologists of the field to know, to predict functions of these unknown proteins. Especially these proteins are important to know since this bacteria affects fishes, such as catfish. So it kills or harms or causes disease for these fishes. So it's important to know so that they can design vaccines. From COVID-19, right? So it's a similar fashion, reverse vaccinology. So once you predict these functions, it's easy to prepare or manufacture vaccines which are assumedly effective in just killing this harmful bacteria or helping fishes not to get infected by these type of bacteria. So that's one thing that I'm working on. On social science, most of the time it's even more fascinating to know. For instance, I worked with Twitter X right now, right? Previously known as Twitter data sets, to look at how toxic messages spread through the network of these tweets, through these people's tweeting each other, how this toxicity spreads. This requires some network science, network modeling, and also some unsupervised machine learning, which is part of AI that we're dealing with. And maybe lastly, I just work on some energy-related problems. I just model electrical networks as multi-layered networks, and I make link predictions. Like right now, infrastructure does not show connection between location A and B, but based on my prediction, there should be a link between A and B. So that makes use of also machine learning, to predict these links, so that some policymakers can invest on this infrastructure to extend it, since it's informed case. Yeah, maybe that's good for the start, right? So I'm just pressing on. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm in computer science, and we do. There's a large overlap. Actually, when we were talking, we realized that a lot of the bioinformatics and a lot of the applications are very similar, as discussed in different disciplines. When I like to talk about what AI is used for in class, I often start by drawing a Venn diagram with the different parts, the machine learning and the database side, and it becomes a very messy Venn diagram because there are so many subparts, and we have to be very careful. The terms like AI are just so commonly used that different people mean different things. And personally, I think that maybe the most important distinction is the one that Ahmed mentioned in the introduction, the distinction between symbolic neural, because what a symbolic AI is good at is what a neural AI may be terrible at. And there are some cases, so for example, predictions, the ones that you mentioned with the, if you want to know a true-false answer, there are tools from both sides and they produce somewhat similar quality results. But when it comes to things like playing chess, or sort of more the more open-ended things like the generative AI that ChatGPT does, the behavior can be completely different. And I've actually given a presentation completely independent. We developed the presentations independently. I gave one artist versus geek. The symbolic AIs are like geeks. They can do mathematics proofs better than humans. They can play chess, and if you use a geeky type of symbolic AI, your chess program will never ever break the rules of chess. It took decades to create a programs that could beat humans, but right even in the 50s when the first chess programs were developed, they would never break the rules. They would never have a piece move in to a wrong spot. ChatGPT was able to play chess right from the get-go. I have been told it's even has become quite good at it in a much shorter time frame than the geeky types of AI. However, it will make illegal moves. And there is not really, I mean, other than putting a filter at the end and say, well, okay, let's check if it just did an illegal move. You can do that, but you basically really have to filter for every single thing that could possibly go wrong. And that's where these problems come from, that ChatGPT is giving terrible health advice, all sorts of things that are really dangerous. There's no systematic way to keep it in particular guardrails. That's in the design. There is no straightforward way to prevent this, and this is why also the math. Now that being said, I mean, I like to compare this with the sides of the brain, where the left side of the brain is sort of more typically has the language center that's symbolic, whereas the right side is more like operates more like a neural network. But we do have that connection in the corpus callosum, and it actually only took a couple of months or so until OpenAI basically built that corpus callosum. It is called the Wolfram Alpha and Wolfram language add-on. No, it's called different. Anyway, you have to pay that separately, and then that portion will actually really give you the perfect symbolic capabilities. So, I mean, one of my big things is to make sure that if you just say AI, you can say something that is true in one and completely false in the other. And so how is it used in our discipline? Apart from, I mean, basically everything that you said is also done in our discipline, computer science. There's a lot of overlap. In addition, I think you said that too. ChatGPT is used for coding, and there are ethics concerns with copyright and so on, but it is used. It seems to help people who know how to debug it. Seems to help them do that. Come up with a draft. Unfortunately, it is also used by people who want to do social engineering, malware, building all of the bad stuff. And that is a big concern. And I mean, I don't consider that as part of my discipline, but it is people who are directly involved with computing. So.
For me, it's a slightly different. My area is AI itself. I was saying my area of experience is AI itself. So for me, the idea is what I want to be working on is the inside. I can explain to you what's happening inside. But that said, to develop new ideas in AI, you have to apply them in something. So over the years, I've worked on a variety of different projects. Probably one of the largest was my AI research in AI in the early 90s, where I was in Michigan State at the time. We were working with the big Detroit automotive companies, and we were building systems. My research was designing the systems themselves, how to do planning and so forth, but we were applying it to designing, planning the process of manufacturing composite materials. So we built systems for them. It was very interesting because the agreement was we do the proof of concept, we give it to them, and we can't see their proprietary materials themselves. So they take it and customize it with the proprietary information, and they use it to build materials that were used for mainly the bumpers of cars in the early 1990s. Over the years, I've worked on agricultural applications where we built systems to manage farms from all the operations, when to irrigate and when to fertilize and how much and all that stuff, to traffic control, to routing phone calls, incoming phone calls that go to a tech support company, which of the experts should this call go to, things like that. But it has always been the focus, I'm working on the application to improve the technique. So that's what I've always been working on, that's still working on.
Well, I'm in awe of the stuff you guys are doing. So I'm a physician, so a different type of doctor, and I take a completely different type of approach. And I'm not an AI expert at all, but I am an expert in is operationalizing it. So there's a lot of back-end stuff that I don't know how to do, but I know how to get it to the consumer. So in one of my hats, I'm an endocrinologist, so a diabetes doctor. Diabetes is a condition where sometimes the pancreas stops working and you need to get insulin. For years, there were people that were very brittle and their blood sugars went all over the place because they couldn't always have a doctor telling them what to do, and it's a hard condition to manage. Several years ago, something called an insulin pump came out that works with a sensor. So it is a sticker that you wear that checks your blood glucose, and it tells a pump that you are also wearing what to do. So it's like you have a mini doctor on you at all times. It's having artificial intelligence that is better than going to the doctor every 3 months. It's like seeing the doctor every 7 seconds is what it is. So that's the best use case I have as an actual physician. My administrative role is I'm the chief medical officer for virtual care at Stanford, and we're looking at operationalizing things on a large scale. So for predictive analytics, we know there's a workforce shortage. If any of you have tried to get your colonoscopy lately, you know that it's really hard to get a colonoscopy. So we can look at your genetics, we can look at your past family history, we can look at your hemoglobin, we can look at other things to see if you're suitable for a different way of screening for colon cancer by leveraging that predictive analytics. For generative AI, one of the biggest problems we have is workforce challenges. So you probably have noticed that if you try to send your doctor a message, it takes several days for them to get back to you, which we think is unacceptable. We can leverage generative AI, so like ChatGPT, to tee up the messages for the providers, for your doctors and nurse practitioners. So if you message me, it's going to take me a week to get back, and I'm probably going to send you back 3 words that said, hey, maybe let's check some labs. It's not satisfying for me, it's not satisfying for the patient. What we can do is we can leverage the ChatGPT to actually be more empathetic. It can write a statement that says, hey, I'm really sorry you're feeling poorly. Let's check a lab, and if it's abnormal, let's get you into clinic. So it's perceived as being more empathetic, and that's how we as physicians can learn from AI going forward. But we think it's very exciting, a very exciting field of medicine that we're committed to growing with.
Thank you so much. I think you can already tell we have assembled quite the panel of experts, and every single one of you in different ways have touched on ethical elements. Not a single comment has not touched in some ways on ethics. And Ahmed, you really cued us up here, especially around the matter of truth, right? Because the AI, and I'm using it in sort of a sloppy way, I get it. AI doesn't, in the way that human beings have a sort of interesting relationship to telling the truth, AI, I think, does not quite have the same sort of ethical connection to truth. So that is really challenging. And so that leads me to the question, are experts and practitioners in your field adequately reckoning with the implications of AI for human well-being? And if the answer is no, how should they be reckoning with it? And what are maybe some of the ethical frameworks or guardrails or, I don't know, questions that should be asked in your field right now around the matter of ethics? And why don't we start in the same order? Arun?
Yeah, these are getting more abstract from more typical to more abstract, and yeah, happy with that. Actually, I think for reckoning in manufacturing, I talked about it, industrial engineering. I think it is right away, designed right away within, because, it's kind of defect detection, anomaly detection, or accident detection. These are already embedded for well-being of workers over there, well-being of people at the end. So everything is well taken care of with AI. It's much better than human discern. So human cannot detect failures immediately, but AI does. So that gives much robust safety. So in manufacturing, safety is the first concern, and obviously AI is the most helpful here. Looks like. So I think it is pretty much reckoned in the industrial or traditional industrial engineering. As for the other problems I mentioned, obviously drug design, it's for well-being, and AI does great job with that. I'm talking about pluses here. And also for social science example, if you can detect, toxic messages, it gives room to policymakers, to intervene in a way that toxic messages don't spread, or just immediate warning is just popped up, so that some quote unquote toxic people can stop themselves, control themselves, because they get immediate feedback, something like be careful. So I think that serves society and it informs policymakers in the best way. Of course, there are some hiccups, as Anne mentioned, Ahmed mentioned. I mean, because of this biased approaches by AI, it can maybe just give priority to some minority. Like if the model, this type of generative AI models, is developed from some narrow perspective, and usually it is so, then it's going to prioritize, some worldviews other than the other ones, and this I think can create long-term, how to say, it hurts diversity in a way. So it's important to take an action to design, to develop maybe guardrails, as you mentioned, to have some guidelines, guardrails to avoid this large language models or generative AI to produce this type of biased approaches, so that society is not, pushed towards just a single worldview.
Um, uh, Sorry to say that my view is a little more cynical, in the sense that I actually have a family member who works. She still works with Google in their ethics group, and her boss um, and somebody else who was also in a leadership role in the same department were both fired for publishing a paper that was critical of large language models. It was a very famous paper. It's called Stochastic Parrots. Um, well, so the idea is that it's basically a statistical output, but it just reiterates what's out there, and that is where the sort of every unfairness in what's out there is baked in, and there's no way to get it out in any kind of systematic way. Also, that paper showed that the energy consumption is just completely ridiculous. That, I mean, even just training a single model costs as much energy as a transcontinental flight, and that's not one person on that flight. That's the entire airplane. And I mean, so having seen sort of the fallout when somebody really loses their job is very concerning. So what models are there? I don't think the model question is really all that difficult, because I mean, we can all imagine being in somebody else's role, and the philosopher John Rawls, he created this concept of a veil of ignorance. I mean, if anybody who is to take a decision, just sort of try to put themselves into the station of anybody in society, anybody with, regardless of beliefs, regardless of wealth, regardless of anything, and try it from these different perspectives to analyze something, that would help a lot. And I mean, we may not be perfect at it, but of course, when the people who try lose their jobs. Oh, and I forgot to. Recently, the same thing happened with OpenAI. When you may have seen that in the news when. Temporarily, Sam Altman was fired, but then the actual end result was that when the board was reformed, the two people on the board, Helen Toner and Tasha McCauley, lost their jobs on that board, and they were both ethics researchers, and the people who replaced them are not. And I mean, so that's the situation in which we are. And I think some of the reason why we don't hear about the ethics problems is that people don't speak up anymore, because there have been too many, and these are not the only places that there are computer scientists and ethics researchers and so on who analyze this. But if they come up with results that are critical, they risk losing their job. So yeah, the ethics frameworks think of the position of others. If people thought more about the position of somebody getting hacked, I mean, yes, somebody who is a computer scientist themselves, they may think that they would notice if they're subject to social engineering. But if they put themselves in the position of people who are less educated, they would find that there is actually a problem, and that maybe you shouldn't make all that code available to people where you have no idea what intentions they have. And the other one is the perspectives of the future. I mean, when large language models use up that level of energy, that's not good for climate change. We should be careful about this. So I think the models, I mean, even just the models that come out of the idea that there are lots of perspectives out there, we just have to take the time to look at them, and we have to listen to the people who spend their time doing that way. I don't think that identifying models is the problem. I think it's, and not even the funding so much as the, do we want to hear what the people have to say when they come up with a result?
There are different points here. Well, first, I notice, of course, my colleagues here are mentioning specifically generative AI and OpenAI and so forth. So those concerns don't play as much with symbolic AI for a very simple reason. We specifically design it with human knowledge. We fill it in with the knowledge. We tell it what to do. And because it's targeted areas of expertise, we tend to rely on highly trained human experts who want the real knowledge there and so forth. With generative AI, we really have a very serious problem, and it's unique at this point in time because historically, most of the research, the high-end, cutting-edge research has been done at universities with government funding. AI research is mostly privately funded by industry. And which raises, so the concern is not pushing science as much as the concern is pushing revenue, which is a really interesting issue because it's there. We really need guidelines. We really, the so-called guardrails that everybody's referring to them, it's really important. And at this point, we're relying on industry to self-regulate. I'll be equally cynical to what Anne is saying. I'm not sure industry is going to self-regulate in these issues because they directly impact the bottom line. But I'm not worried as much about symbolic AI, where I actually think symbolic AI is where most of the work has been and will continue to be for some reasonable future.
Yeah, I guess I'm less cynical than everybody else. So for healthcare, we're committed to not doing harm. We're committed to trying to do the right thing for patients. when it comes to healthcare, you've got to get credentialed to do something at a hospital. So I'm an endocrinologist. The hospital is not going to let me deliver a baby. Trust me, you do not want me delivering a baby. But so we're not going to do the same thing for AI. So if an AI product comes out, we have to verify that it works first. So we as industry, kind of as the end user of it, we're going to verify that it works for patients, and we're not going to support something that doesn't work. We're going to have credentialing processes. If I'm an endocrinologist, I'm not going to get to use a surgery AI product. That's just not how things work. So I've got less concerns about that. I do have some concerns about transparency, though. So I think as patients and consumers, they deserve to know if a human generated the information or if it was AI generated. And that's fairly easy to do, is that we can put a disclaimer on there that is something that we can absolutely work on.
One more. I really want to thank Dr. Newman for this comment, because this is precisely why I'm saying the symbolic AI, I'm not worried about it that much, because most of the applications with people that are used by people with the real life expertise, like medicine, are actually symbolic AI. There are some non-symbolic. The majority is symbolic. That's why because it's filtered through people who have.
And also, so up here and probably in the audience, we're assuming that humans are infallible. We are wrong all the time. So the real question for me is, who's right more often? So what if the generative AI, which is wrong sometimes, is actually right more often than a physician is? So these are answers I don't know the answer to, but I think we're going to find the answer in the next 10 years.
And one comment, going back to the question of what kind of AI, I mean, to me, it seems like if you use a symbolic AI, it is like asking a geek. But if you ask ChatGPT, it's like asking a artist. And I mean, yes, the artist can phrase things nicely, but there's no guarantee that what they're saying is correct.
So we're welcoming questions. There's a microphone to the left of the audience. If you'd like to ask some questions, please head over to the microphone.
Hello, my name is Ted. I'm industry. And I'm curious to know, from an industry's perspective, or somebody in industry, isn't it access that has created this sort of ethical question, right? Isn't it access to the masses? And it's generative, right? It's all ChatGPT, it's access. And so imagination is now running wild. And so doesn't that, I mean, while it's access, this has created quite a lot of focus on this, hasn't that helped us narrow the conversation about ethics, though, a little bit? I mean, shouldn't that be where the focus is?
So that is an extremely difficult and relevant question, because yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I mean, I've been speaking in favor of open source forever, and yes, there are many eyeballs and all of that. And now that when the generative AI was immediately made available to the public, I thought, what? Do we actually know what we're doing there? Because the problem is, when you give that access, it's the people who develop the social engineering who have that access. And I mean, I can't completely pin this down, but I feel like I'm seeing already an effect of that on Facebook. I don't know, but giving lots of people access to tools that will develop effective social engineering is very, very risky.
Dr. Denton, would you please define social engineering? Because this is a very specific term, I think, within the cybersecurity space, right? Would you help us understand that?
So it's the kind of getting you to give out private information to people who shouldn't have that private information from you. That's it was at least the usage in which I meant it.
Would anyone else like to respond to that specific question?
Yeah, the access is an important one, because when AI and computing in general, it's a tool. Like every tool, it can be used for good or for bad. And the more, when you have it in the hands of people who know how to use it, who are trained and so forth, you have more guardrails there. When you hand it out, I'll mention an example that's actually on the minds of many people who work in academia in particular. How does this affect how much we trust the stuff that students are submitting in classes? Um, and you monitor this, what's happening nationwide or worldwide, and the response is all over the place. There are places that says AI is banned, don't touch it, all the way to an approach that says no, 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 it's a tool, why not? And you know, there are issues there that I think we as a society need to grapple with in order to come up with where is our comfort level, what do we need to happen in the future.
Um, I like the word access because I think in industrial setting, AI gives the powers of accessibility at the very, how to say, rookie or layman employee level. Like most AI models to say is requires decent education. But with this generative AI, actually it gives access to any person without any education. Very simple prompting, like you're going to say, what is the problem with this machine? And the model just gives access to all these machine learning algorithm powers immediately. So otherwise, I think without this generative AI, it would not be possible for these people, employees at the shop floor, to access to this power. And I think that's brilliant. That's amazing. So, and any person in shop floor can access this. I mean, of course, there are hiccups with everything, but it's developing. I think that's equivalent. There's Andrew, most of you know him. He has, deep learning type of educational company. He's one of the distinguished professors to say, giving education in this field. He has a saying, and I do agree. He says, AI brings equal transformation when electricity transformed industrial revolution. So it's kind of, sometimes it's a matter of talking about, we found the electricity, should we just make it publicly available? So I think it is somewhat in this perspective equivalent to that. Like right now we have this generative AI, should we restrict its usage right now? Maybe I'm a very adventurous person and I look at the benefits of it. And I think as long as it is transparent, as long as it is informed to the user, the accessibility gives democratization and it gives, equal opportunity at any educational or social cultural level.
Let's go to the next question.
Hi, my name's Mike. I work in manufacturing, but this isn't really a manufacturing question. The whole medical side of this thing really kind of fascinates me. And you know how back like in the 80s or prior, when you brought your car into a mechanic, they kind of had to be an artist and they listened to it and they drove it. Now you take your car to a mechanic, they plug it into a computer, it spits out like in seconds what to do, and you change whatever it is or what, and hopefully that fixes the problem. How close are we to walking up to a kiosk in a clinic, sticking our finger in, poking, getting a finger poke, spitting in a saliva tube, and then all that being analyzed, right? And then a computer generating what to do.
So we're a long ways away from that. So I'm going to pick on Dr. Blem for a second. So Dr. Blem is in the audience, and she was one of my mentors when I was younger. Medical education has changed dramatically. So back in the 90s and 2000s, when I learned to be a doctor, we focused on the physical exam. So you think about a doctor, listen to your lungs and listen to your heart. That's very overrated. So that's kind of subjective data. What we do now is we focus on evidence-based medicine, what matters. So a lot of it's objective. So it's labs, it's your genetics, it's things like that we can plug into artificial intelligence to get risk models. So this is where medicine's going. We're not to the point where it's plug and play, where you put your finger in and it'll look at your DNA. I'm not to say it's not going to be there at some place, but what we're leveraging now is the data sets to do what matters. instead of focusing on what doesn't matter.
Thank you for that. This is really good because it's always currently it's always targeted applications that are very successful. And it's very successful. There is a system, Dr. Newman and I talked about before, where that exists in many rural hospitals. It's a very targeted computer system that is designed to be used by a nurse, where an incoming patient who is presenting with heart attack symptoms, for the nurse to determine, is this a heart attack or something else? Does this system really, can it do something? Of course, doctors can do that, but in the large number of rural hospitals that we have, we don't have a doctor and staff most of the time. It empowers the nurse to make this determination and thus benefit lots of people and thus save lives. So it's things like this is where it is, but this general purpose, I'll stick my finger. In fact, about 6 months ago, I saw an ad for a really interesting device. I was really surprised. Being sold in Europe, they are selling a toilet that continuously analyzes what goes in it and alerts the medical establishment, a particular doctor as needed if the patient needs attention. So, but I'm not sure how successful.
Well, with that note, I think we'll probably go to time for last question.
Thanks for some really critical reflection. I want to look at this from the perspective of higher education, which was largely blindsided by ChatGPT, right? And everyone's scrambling to decide whether this is worth investing significant resources and attention to, whether this is a really big thing or this is just another blip in the history of technology. And I'm in the camp that says we've got to be all in because nobody's in control, nobody has a plan. This is driven by markets, and there's a lot of vulnerability for higher ed and what it really stands for. So I think we need to be vigilant and really engaged. But the critics of this move could say, look at all the problems with ChatGPT. It's not what it's been promised to be. But if you listen to the designers, the leaders in the field, they say we've not seen anything yet. These problems, these early problems with generative AI, we're going to get past those. And in 10 years, we're all going to have a personal bot, and we're going to have our personal assistant. And this will be, incrementally revolutionize the way we understand the world, the way we think, and it will change the human condition fundamentally. So I'm curious about what should we do with the folks that are looking to the future and saying we ain't seen nothing yet? It could be blowing in the wind, and partly because we've got to have investors, we've got to have the market on board, we've got to get everybody on board with all this highly expensive technology. So thank you.
So my take would be, we definitely, absolutely have to follow this very carefully because, no matter whether, how useful it is, we have to know what it does. And I'll again use this picture. At this point, if we choose to let a tutor be ChatGPT based, we're doing the equivalent of giving the job to an advertising agent who has learned the right language and the right sentences, and that concerns me.
Because we don't have the answers, we as responsible human beings in the world should all be involved in the discussions. We should have more conversations because ultimately there will be regulations, but who should be consulted? What are the regulations are? What so forth? It should be the topic of a much larger societal dialogue.
Well, many thanks to our panelists. Many thanks, Chris, to you for helping me to moderate this, and also to the audience. We're barely scratching the surface, I feel like, of these questions. But yes, let's give a hand to the panelists. Grateful to have all of you here over the lunch hour. If you would like to stay in touch with the Lawrence Center, those cards on your table contain a QR code and a link that will allow you to get kind of regular updates. It will take you to our website. You can subscribe to our newsletter. Otherwise, enjoy the sunny day, and thanks once again to our brilliant panelists. Thank you very much. Have a good one.